I want to introduce our first speaker. She's a dear friend. Her name is Heather Estay. Now, Heather is an author and a humanitarian, and what she's going to speak about is choice when you think there is none. How apropos is that? Yeah. And after she left her career in commercial real estate a decade ago, Heather began a career in ghostwriting nonfiction books for clients and writing humorous fiction under her own name. She's an enthusiastic supporter of Spiritual Life Center and an avid supporter of African Hope Fund. And I'll let her talk about what she wants to talk about that. Please put your hands together and welcome Heather Estay.
Thank you. You know, it's amazing. I didn't expect to see so many familiar faces. And it really makes me happy, because you're some of my favorite people in the world. So when I was thinking about, and here comes some more of my favorite people in the world. Yay! So when I was first asked a couple months ago to speak at one of these events, I said, sure, no worries. And then a month ago or so, RJ says, well, you know, the topic will be choices. Can you speak on that? Oh, sure, choices. And then a few weeks ago, he said, could you come up with a title? I said, oh, sure, it's going to be choice when there doesn't seem to be any. And then about a week ago, I started thinking, what the heck? What the heck? You know, I stand before you, not as somebody who's like very wise and has all the answers. I have great questions, though. I use them for myself, and that's what I'm going to be doing today, using them with you. And what I'll share some of my stories and share some of my theories about things. But really what I'd like you to do is think about the questions and think about them for yourself. Because we're all very unique in the way that we approach choices. So for me, this is our time together to tap that intrinsic wisdom that we have. You know, I think in the busyness of life, we don't often tap that. We may pray and we may meditate, but we don't actually stop and think about stuff. So having to do this talk was like, oh, I have to stop and think about stuff. I have to think about choices and contemplate. So I'm hoping that that's what you will do for yourself. And again, all of us are going to end up with our own unique answers to the questions or our own unique questions to the questions. So I invite you to do that. So my first question. Choice is connected to free will, right? Do we really have it? Do we really have any free will? I actually got into a spirited discussion with one of my clients the other day. He's a bright guy. He teaches Huna, the indigenous spiritual path of the Hawaiian Islands. He teaches NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And he's got a PhD in psychology. And I can still argue with him. But he had just read a whole bunch of studies that proved that we just don't have free will. And I said, well, Matt, is that what they proved? You know, I went back and I skimmed the studies. I didn't really read them. But what they had proven, I thought, really was that people abdicated their free will. What they were showing are all these different studies. I'm going to share one with you. But they were showing all these different studies where people made choices based on their knee-jerk reactions, based on their unconscious or even conscious prejudices and biases and opinions, rather than using their free will to choose. So they concluded that we don't have free will. But my argument was, I think we do have free will to the extent to which we're willing to question our assumptions and just be aware of those unconscious prejudices and biases that we have. We may or may not be able to do anything about them. I think some of them we can. Some of them, once we've unearthed an unconscious limiting decision or limiting belief or prejudice, I think we can do something about them. Some of them maybe not so much. But I still think that we can deal with them. I saw, does anybody know who Malcolm Gladwell is? He's like one of my favorite, Tipping Point and Blink. And he's got another one that I haven't read yet. Oh, The Outliers is another one. So I saw him a couple months ago speaking in Sacramento, and I think he's great. But he was referring to his book, Blink, which if you ever get a chance to pick it up, it's all about how people make decisions and how they get their first impressions and their knee-jerk reactions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there's one study that really caught my attention, and I wish I had a display thing to show you. But so imagine this: you're at a computer, and you tap this thing, and you tap this thing, right? So it asks you to see right and wrong. Right's going to be here, wrong's going to be here. Okay, so it flashes up right here. Okay, got it. Right, wrong. Really easy. There's nothing interfering with that. So in these tests, what they measure are the nanoseconds it takes for you to push them, right? So something that you have no problem with, it's instant, right? You're just pushing. Something where your unconscious mind is kind of confused with your conscious value system, it takes an extra nanosecond that you can hardly notice to make the decision. So the way that he used that, and they would use it in different ways, it's all about assumptions and associations that we have. So for instance, sun, most of us associate happy. Gloom, stormy, we associate sad, right? And things like feminine, we might associate weak. Masculine, we might associate strong. We may not like those associations, but oftentimes they're underneath. So what these researchers are looking at are implicit associations that we make. Implicit meaning we're kind of not even aware of them. So one of the ones that they did, and there's a website where you can take this test yourself, had to do with race. So they had the face of a black gentleman and a white gentleman, both kind of normal looking people. And then they would put adjectives to associate them. So they had, with the African American gentleman, they had good, and then then there'd be a list of adjectives. With the European white gentleman, they had bad. Okay, I don't want to confuse you too much. But basically, they were trying to see if you would associate good and the African American and bad with the white gentleman, if you would associate those instantly by the adjectives they used. And what they found is that over 80% of people were not able to make that association. They associated positive with white and negative with African American. And that was even of people who were of African American descent. And so Malcolm Gladwell takes this study, and let me read just a little bit from him. And he said he took the test like 5 times. I took it the second time, and then a third time, then a fourth time, hoping that that awful feeling would go away, because he could feel, as he was doing this little thing, he could feel that he was hesitating. And he himself, and he said, but it made no difference. The disturbing thing about the test is that it shows that our unconscious attitudes may be utterly incompatible with our stated conscious values. As it turns out, for example, of the 50,000 African Americans who took the race test so far, about half of them, like me, had stronger associations with whites than blacks. And by the way, Malcolm Gladwell is half black. He's Jamaican. And so he knew it. He knew it, and he still did it. Now, so did he lose his free will? No. Because when he spoke in Sacramento, what he told us is from that experiment, he learned that he could not trust his first impressions. So the way he has taken back his free will based on this is his first impressions, he lets them go. He'll stay with someone and figure out, his first impression, that guy's a jerk. But he sticks with it because he's found that he's wrong. So that's how he's recaptured his free will. So again, the question, just for you to contemplate, is how much free will are you accessing? And how are you accessing it? Okay, the second one. What is the goal, the purpose, or objective of choice? What's the purpose? So if we look at, from a deity's point of view, if God, or however you call spirit, God, whatever, has gifted us with choice, why the heck? Why the heck would he, she, it do that? You know, sometimes I think it's for comic relief. Really, you know, they're watching us do all this stuff and we're all, you know, really. It's like those Greek god stories where they watch everybody down there and what a mess they were making of things. Personally, just my opinion, I don't know that we'll ever know why we were given free choice. Why were we given this gift of choice? I don't know that we'll ever have that figured out, and I'm not sure that that's important. I think one thing that really is important is, what is our goal with choice? Is the purpose of choice to be smart, to make a smart choice? Is the purpose of choice to make a wise choice? Is the purpose of choice to make the correct choice? If that's your answer, you're in way trouble. I just got to tell you, the correct choice, I don't know. In my opinion, it just kind of doesn't exist. So what is your purpose? And it's unique to everybody. On the criteria of wise, smart, good choices, I would have flunked long ago. You know, my life has been a series of stepping out on a limb and sawing it off behind me. That's my kind of choice. And I had to think about that. You know, for many years I thought, well, I'm just stupid, but, or I'm not using choice wisely. And then I realized I had a different criteria for the purpose of choice. And mine had something to do with, I wanted to make the choice that challenged me. I wanted to make the choice that extended me beyond my comfort zone. I always wanted to make the choice that was a little more expansive. And did it often look stupid? Yeah, it really did. But did it feel right to me? Yes, it did. I quite a while ago, I had my 35th college reunion. You know, that one where all these old fogies show up and they pretend they're your age? That one, yeah. And it wasn't recent either, this 35th. And I connected with an old boyfriend from college, and he and his wife lived there, and so I made the mistake of staying with them. The mistake was, I was the last girlfriend before the wife. And she never, 35 years later, she hasn't forgiven me for that. Anyway. So one night, Tom and I, we hadn't seen each other for decades, and we got together and we started telling our stories. So he tells me his stories. You know, he became an attorney, she became an attorney. They moved here for her career, then they moved here for his career, and they had 2.5 kids. The 0.5 kid was really short. He was a really little kid. No, they had a great life. You know, they did all these great things. They had a beautiful home. And so I thought, cool, that's very cool. And then I told him my life story. You know, this, that, I'd done this, that, and everything. And he turned to me at the end, he said, oh, I'm so sorry. You had such a difficult and painful life. I said, what? I did? I didn't notice it as that. That wasn't how I held that life. That would have been a painful, difficult life for him. That was not a painful, difficult life for me. So our criteria was just different. It wasn't that I was wrong or he was wrong. Our ideas of good choices were different, were totally different. And sometimes I think when we're making choices, it has to do with pain, not fear. That's, to me, a different issue, pain. So what I recognize in myself, that I am in more pain when things are just fine. When they're just moving along and I'm comfortable and everybody's comfortable, that's painful for me. For many people, change is really painful. You know, the objective is to be comfortable and to be happy and settled and stuff. To me, that's painful. So it's not that my decision-making process or my choice-making process is any better. I'm responding to pain too, but my pain is just in a different area. So my question for you, again, is what for you is the goal of choice? Another question that I ran into was, what is our methodology for making choices? What do we trust? There's a song that I really love that says, what would love do now? To base your choices on what would love do now. You know, in certain religions, they say, what would Jesus do now? Or what would somebody do now? That sounds good to me. That's not mine, but it sounds good to me. I realize that my decision-making is from intuition, and that's what I trust. Now, I've got an older sister, Lori, who is very smart, and when she goes to make a decision, she gathers data, she talks to experts, she puts it all together, she analyzes it, runs it through the mill, goes off and talks to friends about it, and comes to a decision. And she is very comfortable with those decisions. Those are right decisions for her. I wouldn't trust that. I've never trusted that. I don't trust data. I know how it's created. I help create it sometimes. So I don't trust it. And what I do trust is my intuition. Now, many years ago, still trusting my intuition, I always knew that I had to justify it afterwards, right? So I'd make a choice based on my intuition. Then I'd think of, well, why is that smart? And I'd come up with all these rationalizations. Now I don't have to do that because I'm around a lot of people who use their intuition. And also you can kind of use it as you can't argue with me, it's my intuition. Really? My intuition says so. It's almost worse if you say, well, I was in prayer and I was told this. That's kind of a stop the conversation kind of thing, right? But my intuition, that's what I trust. In Hawaii, in ancient Hawaii, they called it na'au. And they said that there were many brains. There was the intellect and there was the emotional brain, but na'au was the gut. And they said that they felt that people were smarter who trusted their gut. Now the trick is to understand what's your intuition and what isn't. I have 3 minutes left. Holy kashmoli. You've got to listen really fast. So, for me, intuition, again, it may end up looking stupid for a while, but it always feels like the right choice for me. And that's just mine. So the question is, what's your methodology for making decisions, for making choice? How do you come to your choice? What do you feel good about? Not that there's a right, wrong, or indifferent, but you just need to know. You just need to know what yours is. That brings to another point. I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep talking, RJ. That comes to another point. Are there any bad choices? So I have crossed my intuition several times. All those red flags come up, beep, 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 and I ignore it. There was a guy that I got involved with. I used my intuition and asked, is this the appropriate relationship? No. Well, you may not have heard me correctly. Was this a good relationship? Would I enjoy this? Always I got this, yeah. It never told me not to do it. By the way, I think intuition works that way, not to do it, but just red flags. There's nothing there for you. There's nothing good. I did it anyway. It was a catastrophe. Afterwards, it was probably not a good choice. Was it a bad choice? Well, I learned a lot from it. So the question is there really a bad choice? Can we really make a bad choice? Or as somebody said, are we just making the next choice? It's not good or bad, we just make the next choice. So I made the next choice after that. So another question, what's your methodology? And have you really made bad choices? Or just the next choice? There's another question of how much choice do we really have? How much choice do we really have? I would say that we have this much choice. And I would say, my opinion, that most of us use this much. So there are some things that we have absolutely no control over. We don't have control over the weather, the economy, who's going to end up in the White House, oh my God. We don't have control over those. And I think everybody in this room knows that what we do have control over are our feelings and thoughts and actions afterwards. There's I'm going to keep to the time. I'm going to be good. Or do you want me to tell a big story? Okay. So, okay. Okay, that's good. So we do have choice in terms of not the weather, not the economy, not him, but we do have choice over how we think, feel, and respond to those things that happen to us, right? Now, also in most spiritual circles that I hang out with, there's this thing about we created our own reality. And we're responsible for creating our own reality, kind of as if we chose to make those things happen. And I think that's a tricky concept for most of us. Because we look at somebody who has a really bad diagnosis and we say, okay, she created that? On some level, she created it. Yeah, but she created it? Was that her choice to do that? That's been a tough one for me. But I just ran into an awesome quote that feels different. And this is from Eckhart Tolle. And this is on my computer now. It says, accept, then act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it and not against it. So for me, the way that feels different is that, okay, I didn't create it. I'm not guilty for it or responsible for doing this, but I chose this. Yikes. Huh. I must have had something in mind when I chose this. What could that be? What could be the gift of this happening to me? To me, that's a whole different level of choice. It's that more choosing what is there in a very positive, inclusive way. It's that absorbing it into our lives and making it the gift that it always was. And so I've just been given the. So what I'd like to do now is open it up and let's talk about it. Because again, these are questions and my own theories and things, but what came up for you as I was talking? Anything about choices you've made or haven't made, questions you've had?
Who would like to share?
You say we chose the bad diagnosis. I say we received the bad diagnosis and then we need to behave like it was our choice.
Yeah.
That, I can't say I chose it, but I can accept it like I chose it. Maybe.
And I think that's what he's saying.
Okay, thank you.
Is to accept it as if you, in fact, that's exactly what he's saying. Accept it as if you had chosen it. Yeah, I'm with you. Yes, Jeff.
Jeff Hoy.
Oh, please. What I like about that quote is, because the flip of that, and I've really wrestled with this quite a bit, the flip of that is if it's not my choice, then I'm a victim. And someone's doing it to me, and so there's
Right.
nothing, I'm out of the game, the game of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going on my computer now. Thank you very much, great quote.
I'd be happy to send it to you,
Thank
too.
you. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, I will. And you, too. I'd be happy to send it to you. And Beth, too. Okay, so somehow, do you have a list of everybody? Because I can just send the quote to everybody.
We don't have a list of everyone, most everyone, but
Okay. We'll get it to you. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
comments?
I think you were maybe going to start to say the answer to this, and I'd like to hear what you were going to say about how do you tell when it's your intuition, and how do you decide you're going to trust, what you think you're seeing is or perceiving as your intuition?
Okay. And so I think it's different for everybody, Beth. We've got our own little criteria that we use. For me, it's a practice, an actual practice of getting still and quiet and kind of dying. So, I have to let myself die to what I think, die to what I want, die and let it speak to me. It's that kind of intuition, yeah. So that's my process. I think other people have other processes. But I know that it's not, and sometimes it's just I'm walking along and get these red flags, and then I question the red flags. Because sometimes what appears to be a red flag initially is just a fear, a fear of something. So it's taking the red flag and then pausing for that silence and asking the question. Just asking. But I think for everybody, and it does have kind of a low gut feeling for me, but I would say that probably everybody has their own signals of their intuition.
We have a question over here from Michael. Or a comment.
It's, you're talking about that there's no bad choices. And I get that from the greatest perspective, it's all good, but from a human perspective, I think there are some bad choices that we can make. Some choices we make that diminish our lives, and some choices that we make expand our lives. And what I would point out is possibly the worst choice you can make depending on your context, is suicide. I mean, that's a choice for no future choices whatsoever. So, I accept the fact that we can learn from everything that we do, but I think it does matter how we choose in this moment. And if we choose for positive, for the good, that it will lead us to more good in our lives. And if we choose for the bad, that it will lead us to more bad. I guess that is a comment.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, and I agree with you. And I think sometimes, I've witnessed this in my own life and other people's lives. Sometimes we have to make the worst decision possible before we can ever even consider a better choice.
And there's time consequences, right? Some things are short term. I'm not going to eat that today because I know I'm going to feel better tomorrow, right? I mean, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. But it's that, and what I'm talking about is that place where people have to, and I have to, bottom out before I can bounce back and have a better choice. There's some path I'm on for whatever the heck, and I have to bottom out before I can even, it's kind of what JG was mentioning about ISIS. It has to get so bad before it can be wiped out. So maybe that really, really bad choice is a brilliant choice in some form. Yeah, but I get it. Some diminish us and some expand us. Yeah.
Bad choice.
That's a person, it's tough. That's tough. That's tough. And that's when we know that it's personal. I don't know how much pain he was in or what kind of pain he was in. So that's a tough one. And there's some systems that would say you should not have choice about that at all. And some that say you should. Yeah.
Just a quick comment, there's no more time. This is such a great thought-provoking. You should do a workshop.
Thank you. Thank you. I would say yes now only because it's so far away that I wouldn't, sure, Jeff, I'll do it. Sure, I'll do it the week before you kill me. Yes, ma'am.
Since we had 8 minutes, and obviously we have a few more of those 8 minutes for question and answers, how did you choose the questions you were going to ask? How many questions did you ask? And was your last question a closing question in your priority list?
Yikes.
How do we digest that?
So did I have more questions that I asked myself? So it was, no. I had some more personal stories that I would have told you about choices, good, bad, and indifferent that I've made. Gosh, so sorry I couldn't embarrass myself. But yeah, so I had some more personal stories. I think what's more important, though, is the questions themselves. I had lots of questions initially, and I distilled it to the ones that I thought were the most important for us to answer as people of choice, people having choice. Yeah. Thank you.
We have Betsy over here.
Hi, Betsy.
I just want to thank you first, Heather. Your singing is always so delightful.
Oh,
You're
thanks.
a wonderful speaker. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks.
For sharing.
Thanks.
One thing that has helped me when I think of my own choices too, but of other people, such as the suicide or whatever treatment you might take for disease or whatever comes in, is to think of, we want to be in non-judgment. I'm sure most people have worked with that concept. One thing that helped me from a Sufi teacher I talked to said, try the word discernment rather than judgment. And if we use it in discernment, to me, it's so much more positive. I don't move into a blame and game or guilt mode for myself or another person. And I cannot discern usually for another person what is correct or right or the next step for that person. Our free will is about ourselves, really. Yeah. We have, however, I think, a community sense of free will and discernment too. And one we'll all exercise when we vote. And so that takes us to a different level. But today you've been talking about our own personal free will and choice. And I think to even stay in discernment rather than judgment for ourselves is really helpful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If your criteria is to make the right choice, the perfect choice, I think you're in trouble. I mean, just my opinion, but I think it's always going to be tough. Period. Done? Poor RJ, he's trying to give me signals and be subtle. Yeah, am I done? Did you?